Dead or alive.
And that's the great voice of Larry the Liberty Guy. Welcome to In the Dugout. I am Mike Stenhouse, your host. Today's going to be one of the biggest shows we've done, most important shows. Parents and citizens are pushing back against the radical left agenda. And you're going to see in just a few minutes a video and an interview that only on In the Dugout, only on the Ocean State Current, exclusive to us. They trust us. They know we're going to do full story, full justice, no fake news here on In the Dugout. So today, two important segments. First, we're going to start off with a North Kingston issue, North Kingstown, I guess I should say, where citizens are organizing a recall petition against the pro-critical race theory school committee member who's, according to them, guilty of other acts against students and against open education or fair education in North Kingstown. So we're going to talk to Jim McGuinn coming up in just a few minutes. After that, we've got a massive interview with John Fennessy. John is the father of two high school children. As a family, they decided that masks were not healthy and against their religious morals. And we'll show you what happened when he walked his children to school today and how the superintendent turned them away from their constitutionally mandated education. The video that John Hennessy took, plus our extensive interview with him coming up. At the end of the hour, we'll be spending about 10 minutes with Judge Robert Flanders, who will give the former Associate Justice of the Rhode Island Supreme Court, who will give his take on what he just saw with the Fennessy video and these students being turned away from school. All about this governor's, what many believe is an unconstitutional mask mandate. You know, we've talked about it many times. The extreme left, often under the radar, is trying to push through this radical, government-centric, Marxist-centric, anti-American-centric, anti-history, truth, anti-truth agenda. They try to hide it. They try to sneak it through. But parents are finding out, like Nicole Solis. Teachers are discovering it, like Ramona Bessinger. We featured them, and you've seen extensive interviews with them only on this show. And now today, you're going to meet John Fennessy. But you're also going to meet Jim McGuinn, who's leading an effort in North Kingston. Parents are getting fed up. Citizens are fed up. We are tired with this push into Marxism, socialism, progressive liberalism, whatever it is you want to call it from the left. They're fed up, they're standing up, and they're pushing back. And you're going to see two examples of that today. Not everybody follows through. A lot of people complain. A lot of people don't like it. But only a very few people will actually stand up and do what it takes to try to turn the tide. And you're going to meet two of those people today. Before we get to Jim McGuinn, let me show you this disturbing video that just happened literally hours ago in Richmond, Virginia. So let me share my screen and play this for you. And again, it's just part of this racial madness that is going on in our school. Now, this is a tweet from the governor of Virginia, Ralph Northam, broadcasting live on his website the removal of the statue of Robert E. Lee from the Richmond, the capital of Virginia. Just watch. Here we go. This in Richmond, Virginia, just hours ago. Now, I don't know what to make. I I don't know what to make of the cheering crowd, the cheering workers, a governor who's cheering, having one of the greatest symbols. Controversial, sure, but one of the greatest symbols of their state humiliated like this. I mean, it's very personal to me. I don't know why. I don't have any great sympathies for the South. I have great sympathies for our nation's history and the struggles we've overcome. And now they're singing. I don't know. Does it bother you like it bothers me? Whether it does or not, I thought you should see it. Robert E. Lee unceremoniously removed from the state capitol of Virginia in Richmond. And joining me now is a leader of one of those parent citizen groups that have popped up across Rhode Island to fight back and push back against critical race theory in our schools. So we welcome Jim McGuinn, Team the Dugout. Jim, good to see you again.
Good morning.
You are the leader of the group Friends of North Kingston Schools. And as you talk, we'll show your website to our viewers. But the goal of Friends of North Kingston Schools is to conduct a petition drive to have a recall of a school committee member who is pushing critical race theory. Tell us about your group.
This is a nonpartisan group. We've gotten together. We've identified it. Actually, the petition was started by a student. The petition was started by a student who he's now in college, but last year he graduated in May. He was the student body president.
So a student. So what did so we're talking about school committee member Lima. What did committee member Lima do that infuriated this student to start this petition drive?
Well, there were a couple things, but the primary issue is that this woman has just got on the school committee, and once she got on, she started pushing this DEI committee to be formed.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yes, and they've been pushing critical race theory in the school. They've been pushing gender issues and not focusing on health and wellness in the schools, which is required by RIDE in Rhode Island law and school committee policy. They haven't been focused on how students are doing in the schools. They're focused on race.
Political agendas.
It's very much a political agenda.
So let's talk first about technically what you have to do. You have to obtain over 3,100 signatures, I believe, by Columbus Day. Is that correct?
Yes, we have to get, it's 20% of the average of the last two elections, which is 3,102 signatures. And just to put that in context, California's recall is 3.5% of the population. We have to get 11.2% of our North Kingston population.
So your North Kingston charter calls for 11% of your population to sign a petition in order to initiate the official recall process.
To get it on a special election ballot issue.
And then not only would you have to get the signatures, but in that recall election, a majority of voters, including a certain threshold of voters overall, you would have to reach, would have to show up, and a majority would have to say, yes, we want the recall. If a majority, if you get the petition signatures, if the majority says yes, and Lima is out, how is that seat filled?
That seat is filled by the next highest vote getter.
From the last election?
From the last election.
All right. In this case, just to get the facts, Lima, is she independent, Democrat, Republican?
She is a Democrat.
And the next highest vote getter is?
I believe the next highest vote getter is a Republican.
All right. So your complaint...
It's less Democrat versus Republican. It's that this particular person is pushing an ideology into the schools that is not well-known, actually.
Well, and is very divisive, of course, as
It's
well.
very
Now,
divisive.
your group is nonpartisan, is that correct?
Yes.
You
And
are not registered with any party, correct?
I am unaffiliated, and we have people from the Republican, Democrat side of the aisle and unaffiliated people who are supporting this.
What I find very interesting is, again, is this was student initiated. As I understand it, she encouraged funds raised for students' prom to be put towards some, kind of left-wing nonprofit use, and the students kind of felt betrayed. So the fact that students have initiated this, and now your group has formally picked it up, do you feel like you're getting support of students and their families on this?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We're getting a lot of support from parents of students who are very against. Once they found out what's going on in the schools, there was an issue with, they had raised money for prom, and she on Facebook was pushing them to put it to other uses. Some were very good, but these kids went through COVID and they only have one prom as seniors. And, that was only one part of it. The other part was that she was pushing an agenda that, was not consistent with education.
And that agenda goes beyond just critical race theory kind of stuff, right? You had mentioned earlier, it's some of this divisive gender theories, defund the police kind of stuff. So it's really, school committee member Lima, you're really saying, is clearly pushing what you and I would call a fairly radical left agenda into schools. Would you agree?
Oh, yes, and not focusing on the issues that we have in schools, which are boys are not doing as well as girls, and the boys, particularly at lower socioeconomic levels, are really not doing well. So that's really what they should be focused on, and they're not. They're taking the focus off that.
Now, she has voted. The website we show you, which is friendsofnkschools.com, has more information, and we encourage you to visit it if you're watching. But there's also, she's been, and it has images of her, some of her Facebook and social media posts where she supported critical race theory in schools. But there's a larger agenda at work, of which this is a piece called Wit and Wisdom, that she apparently voted for, and you are claiming is actually in North Kingston schools as a curriculum right now, as well as many other schools. What do you know about the Wit and Wisdom and Jennifer Lima's support of it?
Wit and Wisdom, we just paid over $250,000 for just a piece of this new curriculum that's being put into the schools. It's in schools all over the country, and it's in multiple districts in Rhode Island. It pushes a very biased racial agenda. It also says things like the Statue of Liberty is a symbol of white supremacy. I mean, that's the tip of the iceberg.
The open arms, bring us your downtrodden, is a symbol of white supremacy, you said?
Yes, is seen as a symbol of white supremacy, a symbol that has been the welcoming of millions of people to freedom is now seen as, we've done everything with the statues, we've done everything with everything else, and now we're looking at the Statue of Liberty. And that's only one aspect. When you go into it, and we've got more information on what's in Wit and Wisdom.
And School Committee Lima supported that, voted for that.
Yes, and it was just done in April.
All right, when we were talking off air, you said something, what I found was very interesting. I mean, you could have just waited and tried to raise awareness, and I assume her seat would be up for re-election next November?
No, 4 years.
Oh, so she's 4 years out.
We have a split each election. The next election, only 2 of the 5 seats are up, and her, not one. She just got on last year.
All right, but what you said that was really a great point, Jim, was that in addition to potentially ousting her as a school committee member, win or lose this petition drive, win or lose the recall election, you are raising awareness to North Kingston families about what's going on in their schools and which school committee members are supporting which radical theories or not. So really, we know that the left tries to sneak these programs through under the radar without too much public discussion. One of your secondary goals here is transparency. Talk about that.
Yeah, you know, sunshine is the best disinfectant, and the problem we've had is very low attendance at school committee meetings. These kinds of curriculum are being implemented with almost no one in the audience, no debate. What this recall is doing is it's bringing it out into the open. Both sides can debate openly and come to some kind of agreement on where we want to go. And, you know, our hope is not only that we have a debate, but that people pay attention to who's being elected for school committee. And when they go into, you know, vote, they're not looking at people they don't even know who they are. Right. So that you know, it goes beyond just this issue. It goes to, you know, who's getting on school committees.
Yeah, who's influencing what our kids are being taught or indoctrinated with, right?
Because sadly, people go in and they really do an eeny, meeny, miny, mo on electing people.
Yeah,
they don't know who.
I've heard that person's name. I met him or her once. Yeah, that kind of thing. All right, yeah, that's a great thought. Now, just very quickly, I don't want to spend time, but next November, I assume there are one or more school committee seats up for re-election.
There are two.
And would you categorize those two current incumbents as pro or anti critical race theory and radical agenda supporters?
Right now, they're going along with the flow, which is going along with it. They're not really, they're not paying attention to what they're supposed to be doing for the schools.
All right. There was a letter to the editor recently by the local North Kingston Democrat chair, Tom Seguro. So we've talked about often on the show. He participated in a left-right debate we held at University of Rhode Island some years ago. He used to work in government as well, for I think maybe even in Governor Raimondo's staff, if I recall, or Chafee, I can't remember which one. But anyway, he wrote a piece saying that the recall petition, just quickly, was not about Miss Lima, but it is. Is it specifically about Miss Lima?
It is absolutely about Miss Lima.
Okay. She's saying that the charter, the North Kingston charter, says recall provisions are only for corruption and abuse of power, and that this doesn't fit in Miss School Committee Lima's case. You say what?
Absolutely not. It does not state that in the charter.
It does not state. So for any reason, a recall can be initiated.
Yes, if enough people think you're not following what you were supposed to do as a candidate, you can be recalled. It's a democratic process.
In fact, you might even say that Ms. Lima is trying to corrupt the minds of young students by teaching this anti-American divisive stuff, right?
Yes, and we are, quite frankly, for the students, this is an example of democracy. So the recall is actually a good thing.
Right. The transparency is bringing a great civics lesson to your town, right? Yeah. Are you finding that students, this is being talked about much, the recall petition and what's going on in their schools? So have you even at this point succeeded in raising that awareness?
Oh, I think it's being talked about. We're getting a lot of good feedback.
All right, Mr.
We're getting pushback too. So
I'm sure. I was going to ask you about that in just a minute. But the last point Mr. Seguros made is this recall is a partisan thing. It's been initiated by the town Republican Party. Now, we said earlier, and you said this was actually initiated by students who don't really have any political affiliation, and that your group, which is really organizing the recall campaign, is nonpartisan. So was Mr. Seguros correct in claiming this was a Republican partisan effort?
It is not. It is not. We've got support from Republicans and Democrats and independents.
All right. So yeah, talk a little bit about the reaction you and some of your volunteers have had around town. Yeah, I mean, we know that people seem to lose their objectivity when it comes to claims of race. So, as far as you know, is there deep racial Is there a deep racial problem in North Kingston documented?
No, actually, the latest statistics from RIDE do not identify that. And just as a history of North Kingston, our town post office in 2016 was named after a Black woman who was a teacher for 30 years. She was a member of the school committee for 8, and she was a state rep for 7 terms.
Wow.
And that is in her issue. She was confronted at a school committee meeting about racism. She grew up in Jackson, Tennessee, and registered to vote under Jim Crow. And she said, "We don't have racism in this town."
When did she say that?
Oh, this was when she was on the school committee. She was always, her famous saying was, "It's easier to build a boy than fix a man." And we have the same issue today. We have to focus on building those boys and girls and not
boys and girls, right?
boys.
All right, last question, Jim, and thanks for your time. I assume to reach 3,102 signatures, that's a lot for a small volunteer group like yours. I assume you could use some more volunteers to knock on doors, to stand outside of public places, wherever it's legal. What can people do if they want to help in this petition drive?
We've got a email, we've got a website, friendsofnkschools.com, and we've got an email, friendsofnkschools@gmail.com. And we've got 2 initiatives right now. We've got, we're knocking on doors, and we also have petitions, drive-up petition signings at both the post office, North Kingston Post Office, which is named after Mel Benson, and our town transfer station.
All right, as you can see here on the screen, you've got a countdown clock. That's cool. You got 34 days to get 3,102 signatures. Are you at liberty to say how many you have right now?
We've got, my last report was over 1,000.
All right, so you're 1/3 of the way there. You've got 34 more days. I assume if they North Kingston, it has to be North Kingston registered voters, correct?
Yes.
Not residents, registered voters.
They have to be registered voters.
All right, if they email you, I assume they could also email you to say, I want to volunteer as well, right?
And they are.
And they are using that button to either sign the petition, have someone come to their door, or to say, I want to help. Okay.
We just got one today asking for petitions to have people sign.
All right, Jim McGuinn, thanks for informing us. Listen, this is a great example of citizens organizing to push back for values they believe in. We applaud you for your effort. It's part of the democratic process. There's nothing underhanded about it. It's written in the charter. It's a legal democratic process. You're exercising your rights, and I thank you as a defender of freedom ourselves for taking this democratic process. Thanks, Jim McGuinn.
Thank you, Mike.
Good day. So thanks again to Jim McGuinn, and wish them good luck, Friends of North Kingston Schools, in their petition drive. It's important that people speak out. It's important that people understand and engage in the democratic process. Okay, today for the big breaking news. Again, it was broken here first in the Dugout, which is a program of the Ocean State Current. Broke the news right around news today. We played the video. We played the interview with the father, John Hennessy. Again, only on In the Dugout. As you'll hear, we're going to show you the entire report we published earlier today around noon, the entire report. It's that important. You need to see it again. If you already saw it once, if not, you need to see it in its entirety. So here's the entire breaking news report In the Dugout, ran with just after noon today.
And now for a breaking news exclusive from In the Dugout, here's Mike Stenhouse.
Thank you, Larry, the Liberty Guy. It's with somewhat sadness that we hear to report on a story. It happened just this morning in Bristol, Rhode Island. In just a few moments, you're going to see a video that is, to me, shocking. All over the state, parent groups have popped up defending their parental rights when it comes to their children's education, whether it has to do with the teaching of radical and divisive critical race and other gender equity theories, whether it comes to vaccine mandates, or in this case, mask mandates. We have talked on this show, we've talked to representatives, we've talked to legal experts, how the governor's unconstitutional redeclaration of a state of emergency in late August is likely unconstitutional and will likely be legally challenged. Emanating from that illegal declaration of a state of emergency was what many parents believe was an illegal mask mandate, certainly an oppressive mask mandate. Many parents complained, but only few walk the talk. Watch this video, and then we're going to talk to the parent who is doing what I think thousands of other parents across this state wish they had the courage to do.
Let me do the talking, okay? Mr. Hicks, how you doing? Good. Just here so my kids can get an education.
Okay, they have masks?
No, they don't.
Okay, we will be requiring masks. So
Okay.
You're welcome in school, but you will be required.
So
to
you
wear
are
a mask.
confirming that you're denying them their education, even though you denied their exemption unlawfully. You're confirming
I
that?
am confirming that we require masks in school.
Okay. So you are denying them their education.
We require masks in school per the
Okay.
governor's order.
The governor's order is not law, okay? Rhode Island law says that there is a legal exemption. I submitted that exemption to you. I'm here under the direction of my attorney to get you to admit that you're denying my kids their education. I'm observing you deny them their education. You did so in a denial email. And so apparently we'll have to proceed from here. I'll be here tomorrow.
Okay.
I'll be here the next day.
Okay.
And I'll be here the day after that for my children to get their education.
Your children are welcome to get their education.
No, they're not
We
welcome,
require masks.
because I already gave you an exemption that says that my family has a deeply held moral belief that does not allow me to mask my children, and you are denying them their education. Now, had you attempted to make an accommodation, that would be, you might say, we can't have them in the building, but here's the accommodation we could provide. That would be in accordance with Rhode Island law. You chose to deny that that exemption even exists, okay? And that is the issue I have. You made no attempt to accommodate. So they're entitled to this education according to state law and the Rhode Island Constitution. And you're denying it to them based on the mandate of a dictator. And that's not how America works. How can you teach civics in this school if you don't even know how this goes?
We are a nation of laws. and
Yeah,
the
we are,
governor's order
exactly.
is law.
You just said it. It is not lawful.
Well,
The
we
General
differ on
the
that.
General Assembly, it's not an opinion. The General Assembly voted to remove that authority from him. Then he turned around and said, I'm going to pretend this is a different emergency and give myself authority. That's not how America works. This police officer knows that. He took an oath to the Constitution. He knows he doesn't serve dictators.
I
I
communicated
also
to
know
you
this isn't the
where,
time-
where
this
your
isn't the
right
time
of
of the
appeal
police.
It's the best. Dude, I
have
hear
to
you.
appeal
But
right
I
under
have to
law.
do, these are my kids, man.
I get it, but
You know,
just
this-
now
they're
it's
being
not-
denied-
listen,
denied the education.
My beliefs, your beliefs, we might be very similar, but right now, it's not. This isn't
Okay,
the time.
I'm not here to
We're trying
cause a
get-
disruption.
we're trying to get
I hear you.
educated.
That's why I came right now, because I didn't want to
Thank
cause a
you.
scene.
And I
while we-
appreciate
where
that.
that appeal right lies. and how you make
I
it
am
so.
not interested in your kangaroo court. I am going through my attorneys, and we will use the legal process. I don't care what Wright has to say.
That's the best.
And that's what this is for.
That's the best.
And I will
That's what
follow
this
the
is
legal
for.
process.
Okay.
Yes?
Thank you.
And you are following an
Guys,
unlawful process.
Enjoy your birthday. Okay.
Joining me now is the voice you heard on that video, the father of two high school students who were denied entry into their high school today because of the governor's mask mandate and their religious and moral objection to it. John Fennessy, you are a brave father. Thank you for joining us on In the Dugout.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Now, I see you're right in the mood. You've got your dugout cap on. You're a Boston Bruins fan, I presume?
Yes, I am.
All right, go Bruins. We love them. Big Bobby Orr fan back when I was a young guy, back before you were even a thought, John. Anyway,
My father used to read me his biography as a bedtime story.
yeah, And I've had the pleasure of meeting Bobby Orr. He is one of the nicest gentlemen I have ever met in my entire life. So know that. Okay, John, what a morning you had. You've sort of been preparing for this. Before I want to take our viewers and you back through the video again and have you sort of give some color commentary. We'll stop and talk, stop, go and talk and all that. But first, why did your family decide that this mask mandate, potentially unconstitutional mask mandate, was not right for your family?
Well, it was twofold. First of all, being intimately aware of the risks of masking my children for 7+ hours a day. That was never an option. Couple that with the fact that this is a completely illegal mandate from the governor. I knew that, this was an opportunity to teach my kids to stand up for what they believe in and what is right. And it was never an option to put their health at risk by masking them all day. And so it was a very, very easy decision for me to make.
All right. We don't want to relitigate the dangers of masking. We've talked about that a lot with Dr. Boston on the show. We want to keep this focused on you, what you've done and what the school can. And by the way, you are a resident of Warren.
That's correct.
Your 2 children were scheduled to attend Mount Hope High School in Bristol, which is part of the Bristol-Warren school system, correct?
That is correct.
And we'll just keep it at your 2 children to maintain their privacy. But just to confirm, in the end, both your children were denied entry into the school today, and they are at home right now when they should be at school receiving an education. They're, as you've said, constitutionally required education, correct?
That is correct.
All right, let's go through the video and have you comment, and we'll stop here and there. Just give me a moment to share the screen. And let's play and go full screen.
Let me do the talking, okay?
So the first thing I think we'll notice is that as you approach the entrance to the school, it looks like you're met by a welcoming committee that was specifically there to confront you.
Yeah, it appeared that way to me. The gentleman you'll see in the red
Mr.
shirt.
Hicks, how you doing? Good.
Mr. Hicks. Now, first of all, who's Mr. Hicks?
Mr. Hicks is the superintendent. So if he's standing at the door of a specific school on the first day, he knew through email exchanges that I would be there to assert my right to have my children educated at that school.
All right,
And
so you did have communication via email with Mr. Hicks, the superintendent of the Bristol-Warren School District, right, ahead of time, and all right, we'll get into that in a second. So he knew, he had an inkling this could happen, and he was there to greet you.
Yes.
Okay, let's go on.
Just here so my kids can get an education.
Okay, they have masks?
No, they don't.
Okay, we will be requiring masks. So
Okay.
You're welcome in school, but you will be required.
So
to
you
wear
are
a mask.
confirming that you're denying them their education, even though you denied their exemption unlawfully. You're confirming.
All right, so much in this 3 minutes to talk about. First of all, do we know who this woman is standing by the door?
I suspect that that's the principal, but it's hard to tell with her mask on. She looks like several other people in the building.
It's hard to tell what what's going on with those masks on.
The entire time, so I didn't know who that
Okay.
was.
All right, you just said there, I lost my train. Oh, you just mentioned you have filed, John, we've lost your video temporarily, but you have filed for a religious exemption with the Bristol-Warren School District?
That is correct.
Is it an online form? How did you do it?
No, so there's forms specifically for vaccinations because that's the most common use of the exemption. I just wrote the exemption myself to make them aware that I was invoking this right.
And did they respond and specifically deny your request?
They did one better. They actually responded and denied the existence of a religious exemption.
Did they do that in an email or via email?
Yes, they did that in an email.
Perhaps we'll take a look at that email later. All right, let's go on. So you've applied for an exemption, well, or you informed them you were taking an exemption in your words, and they flat out said to it. Okay, let's go on.
Confirming
I
that?
am confirming that we require masks in school.
Okay. So you are denying them their education.
We require masks in school per the
Okay.
governor's order.
The governor's order is not law. Okay. Rhode Island law says that there is a legal exemption. I submitted that exemption to you. I'm here under the direction of my attorney to get you to admit that you're denying my kids their education. I'm observing you deny them their education. You did so in a denial email. And so apparently we'll have to proceed from here. I'll be here tomorrow.
Okay.
I'll be here.
All right. So you mentioned the government requires an education for students, and that's being denied. And you also mentioned that a governor's mandate is not law. Now, I'm sure you've been advised by some lawyers on this, and you're a smart guy yourself. Talk about that.
Well, specifically in this situation, more so than previously in the pandemic, the legislature had voted to remove this authority from the governor. The governor then
It was part of the
redeclared a
budget
state-
that was signed into law in early July. Exactly.
Exactly. And the legislature makes laws, not governors. And I believe that his new state of emergency is illegitimate. And because it's illegitimate, it is not law. And I don't recognize it as law.
And any executive order like the school mask mandate coming from that potentially unconstitutional declared state of emergency would therefore also be invalid.
Correct.
Okay, let's go on. Well, we ended there where you say you're going to be coming back. So you're going to bring your children back to school and do this again tomorrow?
As long as they're willing. None of this has happened without their complete participation. If they're not comfortable with it, we will not be back there tomorrow.
Your children.
That is correct.
We'll get to them in just a minute, but let's complete the video.
Here the next day,
Okay.
and I'll be here the day after that for my children to get their education.
Your children are welcome to get their education.
No, they're not
We
welcome,
require masks.
because I already gave you an exemption that says that my family has a deeply held moral belief that does not allow me to mask my children, and you are denying them their education. Now, had you attempted to make an accommodation, that would be, you might say, we can't have them in the building, but here's the accommodation we could provide. That would be in accordance with Rhode Island law.
So there's an interesting point you make right there, John. So would that mean you and your children would be acceptable if they brought you into the building and brought them into the building, I should say, and maybe put them in a separate room or a fully distanced area? So you're saying you would accept some accommodation, even, without masks, even if that meant them being apart from their fellow students?
I would consider a reasonable accommodation had they even made that available to me.
But there was no attempt. They were just we're going to be compliant, and we're going to interpret this to the strictest we can. Now we're starting to see on the left, and we'll let the video play, but it looks like your welcoming committee even includes some security or police people, but hold on one second.
You chose to deny that exemption even exists, okay? And that is the issue I have. You made no attempt to accommodate. So they're entitled to this education according to state law and the Rhode Island Constitution. And you're denying it to them based on the mandate of a dictator.
A dictator, a tyrant? Did you mean dictator?
Oh, I meant dictator. That's exactly what he is.
Well, we are disappointed that Governor McKee has seems to have taken Governor Raimondo's tyranny, and I might even agree, and multiplied it a little bit. All right, let's go on.
And that's not how America works. How can you teach civics in this school if you don't even know how this goes?
Do they teach civics in the school?
If you do, it can't be accurate.
Okay, I got it.
We're a nation of laws. And
Yeah,
the
we are,
order is
exactly.
law.
You just said it. It is not lawful.
Well,
The
we
General
differ on
the
that.
General Assembly, it's not an opinion. The General Assembly voted to remove that authority from him. Then he turned around and said, I'm going to pretend this is a different emergency and give myself authority. That's not how America works. This police officer knows that. He took an oath to the Constitution.
All right. So is that a police officer there?
Yes, that is.
That's not some, what do they call them? Resource person on school? What do they call those people?
He may be a resource officer, but he works for the Bristol Police.
And was he in Bristol Police uniform? Is that the official uniform of Bristol Police, or was there off duty as a resource officer? Do you know?
He was wearing Bristol Police clothing. I'm not sure if he was on duty or what the status
All right.
was.
So your welcoming committee included the superintendent and law enforcement.
That is correct.
Let's go on.
Constitution. He knows he doesn't serve dictators.
I
I
communicated
also
to
know
you
this isn't the time-
where
this
your
isn't the
right of
time to
appeal
fight
It's
is.
the best. Dude, I hear you, but I have to do. These are my kids, man.
I get it, but
You know,
just now
they're
it's
being
not-
denied
listen,
the
My
education.
beliefs, your beliefs.
Well, it looks like the police officer was not trying to aggravate the situation. It almost sounded like he felt uncomfortable being there, but he had his marching orders. What was your take of that situation?
Well, if you listen to the last thing he just said, your beliefs and my beliefs may be similar.
Oh,
Now, without saying
let's go
this-
back. Let's go back and hear that again.
You know,
Just
this
now
they're
it's
being
not-
denied
listen,
denied the
My
education.
beliefs, your beliefs, we might be very similar, but right now.
Yes, he
just-
did. Wow. Okay. Got it. But he's got a job to do. And I think you can appreciate that to some level, right?
within reason, yes.
Yeah. All right. Let's go. Let's finish up.
Just, it's not, this isn't. the
Okay,
time-
I'm not here to
we're trying
cause a
be-
disruption.
we're trying to be
I hear you.
educated.
That's why I came right now, because I didn't want to
Thank
cause
you.
a scene.
And I
later.
appreciate
Where
that.
that appeal right lies. and how you made
I
your
am
choice.
not interested in your kangaroo court. I am going through my attorneys, and we will use the legal process. I don't care what Wright has
That's
to
the
say,
best, that's the best.
and that's what this is for.
That's the best
And I will
That's what
follow
this
the
is
legal
for.
process.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank
and you are following an
guys.
unlawful process.
Enjoy your birthday, okay?
Let me do the talk.
Wow. Okay, John. So, you did it. You'd been thinking about it for some time, obviously. Before we ask how your daughter has reacted to the experience, which must have been traumatic, how are you feeling? Any second thoughts on what happened today?
No second thoughts at all. All they've done is confirm for me exactly what I thought, which is, all the governor has to do is stand behind a podium and make demands now, and everyone down the line is going to go along with it. Even to the point where they'll say, we are a nation of laws, thinking that they're upholding laws.
Right. And as you clearly mentioned, and as we've been talking about in this show, properly enacted laws through the democratic process are one thing. Potentially unconstitutional dictatorial type mandates are quite another.
That's correct.
Your children, I'm sure they are upset. We want to respect their privacy, but is there anything you like to say about how they're doing?
They are upset. They're upset that they don't get to have the normal high school experience. They also understand that the normal high school experience no longer exists in the state of Rhode Island. And so they realize it's not an option. They know they can't go to school all day and wear a mask, that it's not safe. And they know that what the governor is doing, and in turn what the schools are doing, is wrong. So while they're upset that they can't have the high school experience most kids look forward to as they progress towards high school, they understand what's happening here. And I think they're going to learn a more valuable lesson in this than whatever mask obedience protocol they have in place in school right now, because I'm sure all they're learning about today is how to stay in your bubble, wear your mask, and don't talk to people. There's no value in that. So they're not missing much today, but they're
How
going
to
to
be
miss a lot
how to be
tomorrow.
subservient, in other words.
Exactly.
And do you think listen, you are a well-spoken, intelligent man. I'm sure your wife is as well as a woman. Do you sense that your children understand their young high school age? Do they understand these principles and what's at stake here with our liberties?
Yes, they do. I've always, from a young age, tried to appropriately educate them on that fact and make sure that they're strong, independent thinkers that challenge authority when necessary. And so, I didn't ever realize how quickly they would need to use it, but here we are.
How far do you think your family is going to let this go? Listen, critics are going to say it's you, your family, who's denying your children their education. Of course, as you stated, there are those of us who believe that no, it's the school district who's denying the education. But right now, your children are not in school. They're not receiving an education. First, just quickly, is online learning an option they've offered to you?
No, it is not. They've made no attempt at an accommodation.
So
And I'd
right
say-
now, all of the Bristol-Warren School District is in person 100%?
That is my understanding. I know some school committee members tried to discuss an option for online learning that wasn't fully realized. Hopefully something like that's in the works, especially if they're going to begin quarantining children based on tests. What are they going to do? Fall behind 8-10 days because someone tested positive that sits 3 feet away from them in
Yeah,
a mask all
yeah.
day?
Yeah. All right, let's go back. So how far are you going to let this go? Your children are not receiving an education. You have other options, private school, homeschool,
Yeah.
or just keeping them out of school. What is your thought process on all of that?
So right now, my children are not receiving a public school education. When we returned home after being denied access to the school, they began doing educational things so that on their first day of school, even though they're at home, they are engaged in learning. If the school continues to deny them access, the plan is to homeschool them. And I would argue that the homeschool curriculum I'm going to put in place is far superior to that of the public school.
Wow. And your wife, is she, are you both at home? I know you both work. Are you both at home able to give them that homeschooling education for the near term at least?
My wife's schedule is less flexible than my own, so I will be taking that on primarily. With the curriculum that we're using, it is designed to assist parents who don't have an indefinite amount of time throughout the day to dedicate to being the sole teacher.
Now, the mask mandates, as I understand it, often do not include masks during outdoor periods, only for indoor. I don't know if your children were involved in any sports or other extracurricular activities outdoor. Do you know if they will have access or allowed to participate in anything like that?
So they weren't last year. One of my daughters wants to participate in some sports this year. It's my understanding that if you are a homeschool student in the district, because you're still a taxpayer, you're still entitled to access clubs, sports, school dances, the prom, things like that.
Last question, before we say goodbye for today anyway. Well, last substantive question. In any way, I mean, have you heard from other parents out there who maybe feel the same way, but didn't have the fortitude that your family have? Have you heard from still other parents who might disagree with you and say, how dare you use your children to stand for your own personal values? How would you respond to the pro or con feedback you've gotten from other parents?
So I'll respond to the con first. I never pushed my children into this. It was completely their decision. Now they want to be in school. I had to make the medical decision as a parent not to mask them for 7 hours a day. My wife is a nurse. She knows it's not safe. I know it's not safe. So that wasn't an option. What I did make optional was attempting to go to school the first day unmasked to see if they could go. And they made that choice. So I'm not just holding my kids out there and saying, I'm going to use this to pursue, my own interests. That's not even a thing.
Okay.
And if tomorrow comes and they say, listen, I'm not comfortable with doing this, we won't go.
Support from other parents, yes or no?
There's actually a lot of parents in the East Bay. If you recall, before the governor realized that giving people the choice or giving districts the choice to mandate or not, before he realized that they were going to lose that battle because
Like
parents-
what Gloucester did, yeah.
Exactly. We outnumbered the pro-mask mandate parents at the meeting 10-1.
Wow.
So there are a lot of people in the East Bay that aren't for this. I'm in contact with many of them. They have young children that they obviously cannot expect to send to school unmasked and have them get into it with adults. So they're in a difficult place. 2 meetings ago, we had 20 students leave the district for homeschooling. The last meeting, we had 11. I'm sure there'll be more this meeting. So there are people that are choosing to use other methods in the district of showing their
They're
discontent.
pushing back and resisting in their own way. You chose this way, and you're standing for your principles. Your children are standing for what they believe. It takes courage to do that in today's environment, and we thank you. So, last question, from a matter of process. You said you may or may, depending on what your children say, go back tomorrow. Whether you videotape it or not, I don't know. But at least, would you be willing to come back on our show on a regular basis and update the viewers as to what's happening both with your children and with your communications with school and state officials?
Yes, I will.
All right. John Fennessy, representing the values of many parents across this state, certainly the emotions and feelings, but maybe totally unique in taking such a public stand and courage in defending those values. So we thank you for standing to your principles, to your whole family. We wish you Godspeed. We hope it's not too upsetting. And we'll look forward to talking with you maybe as soon as tomorrow. Good luck, John.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay. Okay, joining me now to discuss the legal implications of the video you just saw, the interview with John Fennessy, is our resident legal expert, a board member of the Rhode Island Center for Freedom and Prosperity, a good friend of mine, and of course the chairman of our board subcommittee, the Flanders Legal Center for Freedom, which you'll be hearing more about in the near future. Judge Flanders, welcome back in the dugout.
Thank you, Stan. Glad to be here.
So we've come to this where students are now being turned away by educators. You saw the video, just some overall thoughts.
Well, this could end up being a test case for the question that is obviously much broader than this particular incident, which is whether the governor has the ability under the recently passed budget law that purported to end his and the previous executive orders as of September 1st and require him to issue a new executive order if there was indeed another emergency, which is what this is all supposed to be premised on. Is there an emergency situation? Because it was clearly the intent of the legislature to signal to the governor that if he wanted to do things beyond new emergency declarations, he had to come to the legislature to get that done. They were, as you know, mostly silent during Governor Raimondo tenure.
Yep.
All that blizzard of executive orders issued. So they put a stop to that and said, those will expire as of September 1. And anything else you've got to come back to us for. And so the legal question here is, in declaring a new emergency based on the Delta variant to the COVID virus, is that really a new emergency within the meaning of that law?
Right, distinct and separate from the original virus.
Correct.
Right.
So that's really what will be tested here if this gentleman and his family decide to press the issue. And of course, it has ramifications beyond just this one situation, as unfortunate as it is.
As I've mentioned on this show, and we won't go into it now, there are some discussions about legal action there. But all right, what I want to ask you a little more specifically about it, a little lower level though, is this Fennessy, John Fennessy, claims that he filled out a religious exemption form, and that and that it was denied. On this show, you and I have discussed that it's our basic understanding that any kind of medical mandate usually has a medical or religious exemption to it, whether that's a vaccine, a mask, or whatever else it could be. Do you think there's legal grounds for the school or the state to deny such a religious exemption?
Well, certainly in the private sector, where there are widespread mandates from certain employers to require mask wearing for people who are unvaccinated, particularly, there has traditionally been always an exemption for medical reasons or for religious reasons. And so the question is whether that should be required. And of course, when you get into religious reasons, there are constitutional implications of that.
Right.
So if someone has a religious basis to not want to wear a mask, then that brings up a whole host of issues under the federal and state constitution about the scope of that. Even extending to conscientious objection. You recall this issue came up with the draft clause.
Yeah, the Gloucester,
and Gloucester and elsewhere. So, I think that's a genuine point that will have to be pressed when he goes to the next level, if he decides to press it in litigation. Or you notice that the school officials were telling him that he should take this up with the Department of Education, but query whether they have the power to, in effect, overrule what the Constitution may require.
Yeah, and that's sort of the question I had. So the governor issued the mask mandate. The Department of Education clarified and put more definition to the mandate. But yet it was the district school that turned the child away. Based on your understanding of how the hierarchy in law works, which of those entities, the school district, the Department of Education, or the executive branch, the governor himself, would have the power to ignore or override or overrule a religious exemption form?
I don't know that any of them would, if it's a true religious exemption. They might have the ability to test how authentic that is, what the basis for it is, but I don't know that they can probe too deeply into an assertion of religious grounds to support this. If this is truly a good faith belief that they have, that they shouldn't be required to wear masks.
That's a question we're gonna have to find from John, because he's agreed to come on our show and update us what's going on. We don't know who actually, I think the only people he was in contact with was the school department, but did they, under their own authority, deny the exemption? Did they raise it up to RIDE and say, no, RIDE is denying your exemption, or the state is denying your exemption? We don't know. We'll try to find that out and maybe have you back and comment on that. Now, Bob Flanders,
one point, Mike, I want to make, though, is you recall that this issue came up at URI, where students at URI were apparently claiming a religious exemption, and quite a number of them were able to invoke that, and it wasn't questioned by URI.
Yeah, the school didn't question it at all, did they?
No, and so many of them were able to, go back to college there without having to wear
a mask. What a great point, and it's all part of the same state government. URI, the public schools, all part of the Rhode Island government. So it's government denying students an education on the one hand because of a religious exemption, but allowing it on another hand. Wow, that creates a potential legal conflict, doesn't it?
It does indeed.
Wow, great point. See, this is why we pay you the big bucks, Judge Flanders. This is awesome.
If only that were so.
If only that were so for all of us. All right, now you're also, let me ask you, because what most people don't realize, in addition to being an esteemed judge and Supreme Court and lawyer and candidate for Senate, you were also head of the Board of Education for a while. So education is critical to you. I'm sure it wasn't the case when you were there under your direction, but it is the Board of Education members right now who are allowing these heavy-handed rules to go on, who issued their own rules even before the governor's mandate. I mean, are we looking at well-considered people here, or just a bunch of lemmings who will follow the Department of Education's director or the governor's every edict?
Well, I wouldn't characterize them as lemmings, but the fact is that all of them are gubernatorial appointees, and the governor can, I suppose, replace them under certain circumstances. He gets to pick the chair of that group. Yeah, they do communicate with the governor. And in my day, when I was chair of the Board of Regents, the governor actually sat as a board member at the time of picking who would chair the committee, and played a very important role in picking who would be the Commissioner of Education. So typically the governor takes a very active role with education matters. And certainly that would be true of Governor McKee, who, as you know, has a long expressed interest in education in Rhode Island.
Well, he probably didn't appoint most of those board members, even though they are governor appointed, because I'm sure most of those came under Raimondo. All right, Judge Flanders, we just want to get a quick hit. We may have you come back as this situation develops. As you heard on the video, John Fennessy said he's going to be going back there tomorrow with his kids. Whether he has his videotape on, I don't know. We'll see or not, but there might be more developments. And as we get some information as to who exactly he was dealing with, we'll run that by you as well. Bob Flanders, thanks again for In the Dugout.
Thank you, Sten. Have a good afternoon.
All right. Thank you, Judge. He always tells me he's not a judge. You should say former judge, but I just call him judge. It's like calling somebody Mr. or it's polite. It's a title hearing. So Judge Flanders will always be in my book. All right. Now we should mention that in Bristol-Warren, that school district is not without controversy. You might remember, now that superintendent you saw in the video is just, I think, an acting or an assistant superintendent. The original superintendent, Jonathan Bryce, was himself embroiled in a couple of controversies, especially one more recently this summer having to deal with, he set the opening day of school, which was supposed to be yesterday, Tuesday, on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, the great Jewish holiday celebrating the new year. And then under much public pressure, he moved the start of school to today. And that's when you saw the video from John Fennessy. But he was also, and under that pressure, he resigned. Here is the headline from the East Bay, Rhode Island newspaper that showed that back in July, I believe this was, you can see this was published July 20th, that Jonathan Bryce resigned over that Rosh Hashanah school start. But there's something even more important and more relevant to our discussions here on this show. You may not know what LEAP is. All right, here is LEAP. LEAP is the Learning Equity and Accelerated Pathways. This was a group put together by Commissioner Infante Green, parentheses, my words, to give cover for what would eventually become this critical race theory push in schools. And Jonathan Bryce, the former superintendent of the Bristol-Warren School District, was a member of this LEAP task force. I think there may be 18, 19 members, something like that. And they indeed put forth a report you just saw. It was all rigged from the beginning, basically to recommend that diversity, equity, and inclusion and racial theories and racial history need to be taught in schools. It all was designed to give Infante Green cover to advance this radical agenda. And indeed, that's what happened. The report came out. So as a member of the task force, the superintendent, the former superintendent of Bristol-Warren Schools, Jonathan Bryce, clearly was a big supporter of all these critical race theory principles. And clearly this stuff is happening in schools. So this is where parents are getting a double hit. They're getting the mask mandates, which many of them don't like, and they're getting these divisive racial and gender theories shoved down their kids' throats, which they also don't like. And just Jonathan Bryce and the Bristol-Warren School Department is right there in the middle of it. So we just thought you'd like to know that this isn't the first time that Bristol-Warren has taken, a pretty aggressive step to intrude on parental rights and to indoctrinate and overregulate our kids. We're going to be following this story with the with the Fennessy family. We're going to be talking more about the letter that the General Assembly sent to the governor about ending the vaccine mandates. There's all kinds of stuff going on people don't like in this state. Ending the vaccine mandates for healthcare workers. Already, for our sources, we've learned that the Speaker of the House has already twisted the arm of one member of the House of his leadership team to recant and ask to have his name removed from that letter. We'll tell you more about that tomorrow on In the Dugout. This is Mike Stenhouse saying we'll see you tomorrow. Next game. Good day.